doesn't actually know anymore and cannot help. They cannot guide. They can quote the holy books. They can point to parables and metaphors. They can read historical accounts, but they cannot truly assist the student beyond a certain point. In fact, they often encourage the student to cease their inquiry and be satisfied with the basic exoteric shell. The rudiments should be enough. They infer that it isn't actually the done thing to go too far into this stuff. Better not to dig too deeply. It may even be considered disrespectful. And in times gone by, just a very, very short time ago, a few hundred years ago, you could be put to death for suggesting alternative interpretations of the Bible. You could be executed for seeing things in a different way. And for, I would say, 1700 years, there was one way put forward, and that was it. And anything else was not for the common man to worry about. And I contend that this philosophical deterrent is still active in mainstream society, in mainstream religion. Many billions of people do not want to think. They want to do anything but think. So if someone throws down any sort of statement that requires contemplation or contains some sort of mildly provocative element, it is treated with disdain. Sometimes politely, sometimes not. And this self-defeating dynamic has become very much a part of the mainstream culture. It's hard to say no to that. The notion that thinking is somehow the strange pastime of a vague, unimportant minority. And in fact, the people who are really doing interesting things are behaving quite badly and do not think, there's no requirement for that, and they don't exhibit any kind of balance or higher conduct at all. That's the message. And an extreme example of this fashion for the unthinking human can be seen on television, and it's often packaged, as we call it now, as reality TV, a lot of this stuff. And I first got on the trail of this material when I watched a sort of back-to-back marathon of a show called Hoarders. Now, Hoarders, as many of you probably know, some of you may not though, is a show about mentally ill people who fill their homes with garbage. All sorts of stuff: clothes, toys, collectibles, knickknacks, food, scrap metal, bags of feces, dead cats, all kinds of unpleasant things like that. And they pack these objects up to the roof, and it's crazy. It's just crazy. And it's compelling. I watched a ton of these episodes, I admit. 2 or 3 seasons of it, easily. I can do that. But I learned some things from watching this programme, although I damaged my brain in the process, and I've had to heal it again subsequently. I saw some things. And there was this great woman on the programme, one of the psychologists who did seem to help people. Her name was Dr. Suzanne Chabot. She's like a psychologist who specialises in OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder dynamics, in her practice in New Orleans, Louisiana. And she was excellent, I thought. I liked the way she did things. Many of the other psychologists were not helping at all, but she did. But all this is quite beside the point, to be honest. After watching a gazillion episodes of Hoarders, let's just say that, I reached a certain threshold where I realised that nothing new was happening. In fact, in almost every case of hoarding, despite some very good intentions, the hoarders themselves continued to suffer serious mental problems, and really nothing was being done to address that. And really, to be quite truthful here, in the most severe cases with the worst mental illness and the worst psychological help, that produced the best television, the spiciest television, and there's no doubt about that. And the program makers knew that, the psychologists knew it, the hoarders knew it, and the viewers knew it. And it's just like an abusive equation, that, I'm sorry. So I stopped watching when I realised that I was part of that. But it's hard to deny that there are a lot of reality TV shows that are far worse than Hoarders. Far worse. Programmes with no redeeming features and few opportunities for learning, to put it very, very generously. Toddlers and Tiaras, Teen Mom, The Real Housewives, Porn Stars, that's PAWN, Millionaire Matchmaker, and Mob Wives. And let me say that my willing exposure to these sort of things in hotel rooms is infrequent and sporadic. And I like to consider it, and take this with a pinch of salt, as a kind of surreal anthropology or something. But I admit, it is just plain old curiosity sometimes. A bit of shadow work again. Abnormal, yes. But from this, reprehensible choice of poisons, whatever show you pick, it's the same principle at work. And many of these things are staged, really. The jeopardy and the drama fabricated. And it's all very heavily edited to purposefully amplify that drama and manufacture it where it does not exist. And whichever way you look at it, one cannot help but observe that what's really going on here is that mentally ill people are being presented to the camera for entertainment. Very strange form of salacious voyeurism, isn't it? It is profound human sadness marketed as just tongue-in-cheek throwaway entertainment. Particularly with Mob Wives. It is one of the most staggering things I have ever witnessed on a screen. It's not even really about the particular individuals and their personal tragedies and dysfunctional behaviour. It's about the positioning of this material as an acceptable form of recreation. Millions and millions of people watch this stuff faithfully, regularly. And, no doubt some of those people are greatly influenced by this stuff and mimic what they see on the screen. So there I was, lay on the bed, shamefully. And I watched Mob Wives, and I kid you not, for those who haven't seen it, just some very disturbed ladies, very disturbed, lying, cheating, conniving, scheming, revelling in all forms of deceit. Incredible. Goodness me. And then it struck me, as I was coming to the end of this shamefulness, I realised what I was watching, what I was really seeing, and it amazed me. What I was seeing on the screen was a literal depiction of the 8th circle of hell, which is called Malebolgia. Italian words, male, evil, bolgia, like a ditch, a depression in the ground. And of course Dante Alighieri was the guy who brought this to us, born in Florence, Italy in the Middle Ages. And he wrote this epic poem called The Divine Comedy, which really tracks the soul's journey from wrongness to goodness through expeditions in hell, purgatory, and heaven. And in Dante's vision, there are all these categorizations of hell, of course. These zones of weirdness and punishment, and accounting for all kinds of naughtiness. One of these dreadful realms, the 8th circle of hell, is populated by those who define themselves in earthly life through inauthenticity and dishonesty, through generally scheming, duplicitous and disingenuous behaviour. It is a place where all those lies are finally accounted for. Even though at the time they were perpetrated on Earth, it felt like no one might ever know about them. And so I recognised that this is what was being shown on the television screen. Exactly this. The images on the screen and this poetic channeling from 700 years ago were talking about the same thing. Were dishing up the self-same resonance. So the 8th circle of hell is in fact a large cavern which is divided into 10 concentric ditches or trenches, each one of those individually termed bulgias, and each one of them deals with a very specific type of earthly sin, or let us say in a more modern and non-religious language, different patterns of dishonourable human consciousness. Now the 9th bulgia is reserved for those who, in life, and I quote, promoted scandals, schism and discord. They are forced to walk around the circumference of the circle, bearing horrible, disfiguring wounds inflicted on them by a great demon with a sword. The nature of the wound mirrors the sins of the particular soul. While some only have gashes, or fingers and toes cut off, others are decapitated, cut in half, or are completely disemboweled. This is what the corporate media is serving up to half the planet as mental food, as visual, sensual entertainment. And I think this is very significant. And it has reached a point where the dysfunction is beginning to parody itself. This hell on television is satirical in nature, so ridiculous. You know, in reading about the infrastructure of hell, as you might say, I couldn't help but notice that the 9th bulgia, as atrocious as it is actually preferable to the second one, where those guilty of giving excessive flattery, which, you know, you might not think is so bad really, are immersed forever in a river of human excrement. You know, these Italians sure do have ripe imaginations, do they not? But behind all this grotesque imagery is a serious observation. It is being suggested that we can't get away with anything karmically. We can't demonstrate imbalance and wrongness in our daily lives indefinitely. No matter how big or small or manageable or gross or slight, how obvious or secret or cunning, doesn't matter. Nothing goes unrecorded. And so managing inauthenticity to acceptable levels is no good. Well, philosophically and metaphysically speaking, I totally feel that. I think that the spiritual principle inside that old Hindu idea of karma is real and active. And I think that the Christian idea, even the Roman Catholic idea of this horrid punishment zone, is symbolic in a way, and yet certainly there is direct punishment for one's own poor conduct. There really is. So whilst it's a good idea to extract the sort of overtly negative indulgences of Roman and Catholic histrionics in all this, the principle that is whirring away in the background is worthy of our consideration. If we willingly descend into bad conscious habits and lowly conducts, if we disown our potential, live as less than we are, then in the end it's all going to catch up with us. Everything is known. Every whisper, every faint shadow, every muttering, every discourtesy,